All right, so let's give Hangman a try here. So I'm going to fork it. Unfortunately, I've not forked it already. So we'll take a couple minutes. But yeah, let's just start imagining what our Hangman UI should look like and maybe what components might exist. And then I'm going to be asking you guys, where did that go? Asking you guys what components we're going to need to create. So again, very similar to like, OOP design, or I guess even just coding. You could write one component that does everything, but that's not the proper design. So you want to break up functionality into smaller components. So that's kind of just better organized and easier to reuse some of that code. So make this larger. We're doing git clone React Hangman. All right, that was pretty quick. CD React Hangman. All right, so this is a project we're going to create from scratch. We don't have any starter code, which is totally fine. Bring that up here, I guess. That larger. I think my screen's dim. Yeah. All right, so we have our git ignore somehow. I guess is that already built in here? I don't know. All right, we need to create React apps, so let's go through that motion. Unfortunately, it takes a minute. So I'm going to do npx create React app. I'm going to call it Hangman app. All right, it's going to do its thing. Let's take a look at the README, make sure we kind of have a good understanding of what we want here. Okay, Hangman. So I don't know, is anyone not familiar with the game of Hangman? It's just that word guessing game. Okay, so assuming that we all know what Hangman's all about, we need to kind of implement this here. So we're going to be taking some user input. So the way the game works is that the user should submit one letter, and that should be their guess. Based on their guess, we need to either tell them, hey, there's no X's in this word, or we need to fill in all the X's that are in the words that we show it to them. So kind of like Wheel of Fortune, where we turn over all the letters, that's going to be part of it. We're going to have to know what our target word is. So obviously the user doesn't know what it is, but our application needs to know what the target word is. So we need that data. All right, still downloading. If you guys have any initial questions right now, please ask. All right. Okay, happy hacking, it's ready to go here. So let me cd into Hangman app. All right, I'm just going to start this up to see what my project looks like from the very beginning. So npm start should launch that server, and that came up on my other window. There it is.
Albert,
yep.
Maybe I knew this before, and my brain broke and I forgot. When do we need to npm install, and when do we not?
Great question. So we ran npx create React app because we're creating it from scratch. When we've got code written for us, like a React app that someone else created, they're going to have a package.json. So this got created for me. Based on this, when you run npm install, it's going to go through all the dependencies and install each one of these libraries using npm. npx create React app has it's running all these libraries already, it's installing all these because that's the default React app build for it. But yeah, you want to run npm install when you have a package.json available. We started off with nothing here. We had a README, and that's it. So we needed to create a brand new app from scratch that will create a package.json. So now if I commit this project and you guys download it, you guys will just run npm install and it'll go through this package.json and figure out what to actually install.
Cool, thank you.
Yep, okay, cool. So this is our React app. Hopefully we've seen this before. This is our default React app where we've not made any modifications. Looks like everything's working correctly. So given that our application runs right now, let's kind of go through the motions. So first thing I always do is just get rid of the icon, although it's kind of cool to look at, kind of hypnotizing, kind of distracting. I don't want it there. All right, so this is just an empty app. If I save this, again, we have nothing. Again, app is our topmost component. Everything else is going to be kind of nested within it. Right now, we just have a div. And if you remember from HTML week, divs don't really show anything to the user. So if you go to our page, yep, it's just a blank canvas, nothing on it. I could simply add in, let's add in title because we know where our app is. This is our Hangman app. All right, so we added a header. As you would see, there's going to be some text there. All right, so it's pretty basic. I'm sure you guys are kind of familiar with putting some stuff on the screen just via some HTML elements. But we want to add some more React-worthy items in here. So let's start with an input. So as we talked about, the user needs some way to input a guess. So I know I'm going to need an input if I can type it correctly. Closing tag. And they're going to need a button also. So I'm just going to add a button to submit their guess. Say, call that guess. And then what else do we need? Let's just start with this. Let's take it piece by piece. So let me add an HR here for fun. All right, so we're gonna have an input where the user can enter a guess. So let's say placeholder will be all right. So again, if you guys have any questions, stop me at any point. But right now, we just added an input and button. So let's see what that looks like. All right, cool. So again, we're just starting to piece together UI. There's no functionality here right now. I just want to know what this is going to look like. So Hangman app is our title. They should be able to enter a letter and guess. One thing I'm interested in, so this is something I actually don't know, so I'm going to Google it. How to limit input to one character, HTML. Okay, so it looks like there's a max length attribute. So for my Hangman app, we only want one letter. We don't want them guessing words. So it just has some error checking, or I guess error prevention. I think I could add in a max length. Is that a thing? I don't know. The web told me it was a thing. I don't know if they made it up. Let's see if that actually works. So can I type in? Nope, I'm typing. I guess you guys can't see me typing, but I am. I'm limited to 1, so that's kind of cool. All right, that's just additional functionality. All right, so now we could type in a letter. So type letter A and then guess. All right, nothing's happening because we've not wired up anything. Let's kind of just continue on. Again, this is kind of like stubbing out our UI where we're not adding any functionality. Just want to know what our UI is going to look like. So I'm going to add maybe another HR, and then we're going to have like an output where we actually show maybe the puzzle. So let's say we're going to have, I don't know, a paragraph tag. And let's just put in simulation what it's going to be there. So let's say it's going to be like that. See what that looks like. All right, so again, this is going to be our puzzle. Initially, it's going to be all underscores, which means unguessed letters. If they type in an A, and let's say there's an A in this word, I don't know what this word might be, 7-letter word that has A in it. Who's got a 7-letter word with an A in it? That should be
Apples.
Animals.
6. That's 6.
Animals.
Animals, great. So yeah, if we guessed A, we should fill in this A because there should be an A there for the puzzle, and so there should be a here also. So again, we're just drawing up our UI, no functionality, but if this were working correctly, when I hit the button guess, that should fill in an A here and an A there. So we'll get to that eventually. Again, I'm kind of just summarizing what's on the README file, but we also want to show incorrect guesses. I think that's part of our requirements. If not, then whatever, I'm going to show that. So I'm going to have another section they'll create probably, and this will be maybe, let's say, incorrect guesses. All right, and that's going to be probably a list. I'm going to add a span, and then I'm just going to add all the letters here. So let's say they already guessed X and maybe Y and Z. See what that looks like. All right, there we go. So this is my very bare bones UI. Again, we could jazz it up with like Bootstrap, but I'm not going to get that involved. But these are, I think, the core pieces I need. I need an input from the user. I need to show an output from the puzzle and an output for incorrect guesses. You guys with me? Anything else that we want to add? Again, we can jazz this up, but I think this is the bare bones we need. I might be forgetting something, but let's maybe add in puzzle. And that could be a span. The reason I'm making this a span is just to kind of make it easier to kind of pick off here. Someone have a question though?
Not a question. Would you want to guess limit?
Yeah, that's great idea there. So that's gonna be part of our functionality where like, yeah, we might have 6 guesses, might have 10. We could have a difficulty level. It's like, again, something we can customize later. Yeah, eventually we're gonna need to limit how many guesses they have, and then once they exceed their incorrect guesses, that should be game over. So that's gonna be part of our functionality, but yeah, so yeah, now that we have our UI in place, let's actually get to some of the functionality.
What does span do again?
Span is just, it's the same thing as a div, but it's an inline element. So this just creates something I could extract later. like if I wanted to style this, again, this is kind of unnecessary, but let's say I do span ID equals puzzle. Then I could go to my CSS, maybe create a target for that specific span and do my, I call it IT puzzle. Let's give it some coloring. So let's say this can be font size. Make this really large because that's the focal point. So let's make it 40 pixels and let's color it. So color will be, let's make it a light gray maybe. Let's do A. All right, so again, a span just kind of divides up your document. So you can pick out like a chunk if you want to. So now I'm targeting this with my CSS. So the span allows me to only do it for this block or this range of letters. Again, I could target paragraphs, but it's going to be my entire paragraph. I don't want to include this puzzle part. Same thing with my incorrect guesses. Let's add one more. I'm going to call this class. And oh, we can't use class. We got to use class name. That's a React thing. Class name. Sorry, I should probably shouldn't waste time on CSS. I kind of get bogged down in styling, but I like making things look sort of nice and correct.
Real quick, well, I mean, you said it's like similar to a div. Why wouldn't you just use a div? Is it just because it's an inline?
Yep. Yeah. Spans are inline. Divs are block levels. So if I actually nested a div here, I believe it'll break that onto a new line. If I'm correct. Yeah. Notice how that added to a new line. I mean, that might be fine. It actually might look better, but I'm gonna span it up just because that's my choice as a developer. But yeah, again, spans and divs do the same thing. They just are invisible boxes you're adding. Spans lets you do it inline. Divs automatically give you a new line at the end. All right, so again, we're just creating spans. We can target them. Let me just complete this example. Promise I won't do too much styling. Let's make this larger. So incorrect guess. And I want to make that red. Kind of make them feel bad about incorrect guesses. So make that a nice dark red, rich red. Maybe make that font weight be kind of bold. Okay, enough with styling. All right, so this is kind of a look. So again, incorrect guesses will be that. That's kind of a large puzzle, but that's fine. All right, so we got some styling that we didn't need. Now, let's go back here. So this is where we start thinking about components. So here, I've just kind of coded up everything in my app component, right? Like everything is just one level deep. But now I can kind of start picking off like what's kind of separate functionality. So one thing here, I think my user input, that's what's one thing I kind of extract into its own bucket or its own component. That doesn't have to directly relate to my puzzle. So again, these are separate, I guess, wheels turning in my application. That's where I would start creating separate components. Again, this is kind of a design thing, but this is what React wants us to do. So I'm going to create the components folder. Again, this is, you don't have to name it components. It's just by practice. We usually just go for that. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to create maybe a user inputs component. .js. So let's start with this one. So again, my goal here is just to kind of take some of this and nest it away into a subcomponent or a child component. So user input, it's going to be a functional component. And let's call that user inputs. All right, so again, this is our bare bones functional component. What are we returning here? It's going to be JSX. Hopefully we are all familiar with JSX. If we're not, happy to kind of quickly review that. So JSX is essentially, it's almost like you're writing HTML. So everything here looks like it's HTML, right? I'm going to add in that button and that's input. All right, so it looks like HTML. It's not really HTML, and I just lost what I copied. Sorry, some difficulties with life here. Spam, user input. Okay, cool. So I'm going to paste that in here. So again, this looks like HTML, but JSX is HTML plus the ability to add in JavaScript. So right now, we don't have any JavaScript here, but if we do want to add in JavaScript, that's where we start using curly braces. So anything inside of my JSX, which is what we return from a functional component, anything I put in curly braces is just writing raw JavaScript. So I could put logic in here. I could say, you know, math random. That's a JavaScript function. And I don't know why I'm doing this, but I guess I am. You know, this is JavaScript. So if I want to use JavaScript inside of JSX, I basically open up a curly brace block, and then everything I write in here is pure JavaScript. Everything out here is JSX, meaning essentially HTML that allows us to write JavaScript if we want to. So now we get a random number, I think. Oops, we don't. Because I took that stuff away, put it in a component. We need to render that component now. So it's going to be user input. And that is something we need to import because that is in a different file. So we do import user input. All right, cool. From components user input. So now if I look at this, there we go. So notice we have guess and we have this random number because we wrote some JavaScript in our render. Now, why do we do that? I have no idea. Just to show that I guess we can write JavaScript. And anytime you want to write JavaScript inside your JSX, use curly braces for that. Right? That is not possible in HTML. So again, if we're writing just HTML in an HTML file, curly braces would not have any meaning to them. They'll just be curly braces in your output. Okie dokes. How do you write curly braces? I think it's backslash. Yeah. I'm sure there's some escape character where if I want a curly brace, I guess I would just have to do like that. So if I actually want to show a curly brace, there's got to be an easier way than that, but I'm not sure how actually. Okay, anyway. So we have one component that we kind of created away. Let's create a couple more components because I know I'm going to want them. I'm going to create a puzzle component and then an incorrect guesses component. Again, I don't necessarily have to. Some of this comes down to design decisions, but they're going to be doing some logic that, again, my app component shouldn't be doing all the work for us here. So let's create those quickly. Puzzle.js and what else? Let's call it guesses.js. All right, these will be pretty simple functional components. React. Again, if you guys have any questions, please stop me. This is guesses. And we have a puzzle. All right, so I'm just going to do some copy and pasting. This puzzle will go into my puzzle components. And my incorrect guesses will also go there. Guesses. All right, cool. So we have the same thing that we had before, but we just have kind of a little better organization here. Let's make sure we render those components. So we have user input. We're going to need a puzzle here. And then we had incorrect guesses here. Any questions on creating components, why we do them, kind of how they work? Sorry, let's call it guesses. All right, cool. So again, if you guys are with me here, it should look the same. Nope, because I did not import. That VS Code would do that for me, but guess not. All right, now we should be back to where we were. Cool, looks the same, but we have components now. All right, let's tackle one component at a time. So first one I'm going to do is user input, because that's usually the first thing that happens on our page. The user is going to add some items in there. Sorry for my coughing. All right, so let's add some actual logic in here. How do we get the value out of this input? There's a couple ways to do it. The easiest way I'm going to go forth is we add an on-click handler here. On-click. Again, here we're writing JavaScript, so we're going to pass it a JavaScript, something in JavaScript. In this case, we'll say on user submit guess. I don't know what I want to call this. All right, so submit guess is going to be a function that's going to be called. Again, we've said this a few times, but I just want to reiterate it. We do not want to put parentheses on here. If we put parentheses, this means it's going to call this function right away when React loads. That is not what we want. We only want this function to be called when the on-click event happens. So again, do not put parentheses here. Instead, we're just going to pass it a function. And here, let's add some comments, render, handlers.
Hunker, how do we associate the button with the input?
Yep. I'll be getting to that. That's a good
Gotcha.
thought.
Thanks.
So submit guess is going to be a function. Not sure why it's yelling at me right now. Oh, because I wanted a factor function. Okay, so submit guess takes in no parameters, which is fine right now. To answer Michael's question, these two are not associated. Now, we've talked about this before, where any event that happens, your browser automatically passes to an event object. So you may be thinking, well, what if we captured an event and passed it along to our submit guess? Could we do it this way? The answer is unfortunately no. So this event object does get sent here, so we can capture it with whatever variable we want to call it. However, this event is related to the on-click event that happened. This on-click event is generated from a button. So this event's going to have information about the button, maybe some other things about the on-click, but it has no knowledge of this input. This input is just some other element on the page that has nothing to do with this event. But we do want to do something with the input when the button gets clicked. So in this case, using the event object is not the answer because the input is not the one generating the event. Now, if we had an on change here, we had like an on change event handler here. Well, then in this case, whatever events generated from here is referencing the input because the input's the one that did it. In this case, we're going with the button mechanism. So instead of using this event, we can use our good old friend get element by ID. So I do let input lm equals document. Again, that is from HTML. That represents your HTML document. Get element by ID is a built-in function. I'm going to say right. So this is going to be an ID, right? I'm targeting by ID, so I need to give my input an ID value of input guess. Again, that's any naming you want to do. It's going to have it sensible. So input guess. I could give my button ID. I don't really need to because I'm not referencing my button anywhere. So maybe a good practice give stuff an ID, but I only do it for things that I actually care about. So we get input elements, and then we want to get the value. Again, inputs have values. You don't want to use inner HTML. That is a little different value that you're getting. So we're just going to do let user guess equal input element dot value. So again, that's the actual value sitting in the input control. So whatever is in here, that's what value is going to be. That's the value of value. It's whatever the user has typed in. All right, so we have user guess, and then we want to do something with user guess. In this case, I'm just going to console log it to make sure we are getting what we actually want, user guess, and that's all we're doing right now. All right, so again, always good to incrementally check. Let me bring up my property inspector. All right, if I enter value of X, all right, notice I get X in my console. That is what I want. I can enter Y, maybe a Q. Cool. All right, so I'm getting the correct answers. One personal design standpoint, when I enter a guess, right? If I enter Y and I hit guess, well, I don't want that Y to stay here. There's no reason for that Y to stay here. So as a user, friendliness or user experience benefit, we should probably clear that value once they guess it, right? They shouldn't have to delete it because it's not as friendly. So that could be easily done. And all we need to do for that is do input lm and just set that value equal to empty string. So we're actually modifying the value in that input. So this is clear out the inputs. So we get more comments. Get input elements and then get its value. All right, so now that we are setting to empty string, we should see anytime I guess something, let's guess R guess, notice it clears. Cool, again, optional, but good to have good user experience. All right, so our input control is coming along. Now let's talk more about React's kind of concepts here. So we have our parent app component. App is our parent that has 3 children. One is user input, another is puzzle, another is guesses. Something important to keep in mind about React is that children components do not have the ability to talk to one another. So user input cannot directly communicate with puzzle. App is the one that has to do it. So I'm going to go the wrong way is I don't want to maybe have a state value. states. Again, if you guys have any questions about state values, we can talk about them. But in this case, I'm going to say puzzle word, set puzzle word. We are going to use that use states hook. States initial value of the empty string. We need to import ports. What is it? Set or use states from React. All right, so again, we're using this function from React that passes us two values back. One is a variable we are creating. The second is a function that we need to use to update that variable. If we don't use this function, bad things will happen. As in, React is not going to update the rendering correctly if we directly modify this value. Again, we should never directly modify state and prop values. So that's why we have this function that React creates for us. And we can name this whatever we want. I can call this set donuts, set something, anything I want to call it. It's just a variable that's pointing to a function. But in this case, we normally just go with the naming of the variable. So set puzzle word. Now, again, this is the incorrect way to design this. I don't want to create a state value here because my guess, let's see. Actually, maybe I do. I'm going to hold my tongue. So I create a state value. Let's actually see if that's what we wanted. But, all right, so we submit a guess from our, sorry, a user guess from the user input component. We need to keep track of that, right? Think about this for a little bit. All right, so this user guess, ultimately, we need to compare it to this puzzle word, right? We need to know if that letter is in the puzzle or not. Now, our puzzle word is currently a state value inside of puzzle, right? So let's kind of just get our bearings straight. So we have user input, which is going to be, I guess I need to add comments like that. Yeah. All right, this will give us a guess value. This will show the puzzle with field letters. And then
Question mark.
finally,
For guesses, is that just tracking all of our guesses or the incorrect guesses?
incorrect guesses.
Okay.
So this will show the incorrect guess. Yeah, so I probably should have named it a little better. Let's actually make that change so we know exactly what we have. Easy enough to change. So some renaming incorrect. Incorrect is there. Here, here, and here. All right, so yeah, good to have good names components. All right, so there are three things we need to do. We need to get a user value or a user guess. Then the puzzle will update if the guess is correct. So if I guessed A and our word was animals, well then the puzzle needs to do something, right? So it needs to show those letters. However, if we guess X and X is not in our word of animals, well then puzzle does not need to do anything, right? The puzzle is going to stay exactly the same. It's going to be those underscores with the letters we had filled in before. Incorrect guesses will need to update for an incorrect guess. So this points to maybe a poor design decision that we made so far. Because right now, my puzzle component is the one keeping track of puzzle word. Now that might make sense initially because we need to show like puzzle word here maybe. I guess not really, but we'll get back to this. Puzzle should not be the owner of puzzle word because we need to compare puzzle word at this level, right? We need to decide, hey, do we need to update puzzle or incorrect guesses? We could have maybe both incorrect guesses and puzzle or hold on to the puzzle word, but since the parent needs to be working with this, I guess this data, it would make sense for us to have this state value at the parent level. Again, if there's any questions about that, I know I kind of described that kind of poorly, but again, the app is the one that's going to decide, all right, we got a user guess, what do we do with it? Like what actually happens from that? So I'm going to put that state value here. States here. I need my imports. So, all right, so I'm going to get rid of this from my puzzle. But my puzzle does need to know about that puzzle there. So let's get my components. All right, so we have about 20 minutes left, so I'm going to speed up a little bit, but hopefully won't lose you guys. So we have our state values. We need to import that from React. Cool. All right. So now let's set a default value here just for our sake. Animals will be our default word for now. All right, so puzzle word will be initialized to animals. Our puzzle component does need to know about that, right? You need to actually show those as we fill them in. So this is where we need to pass down a state value. We're going to pass it down as a prop. The easiest way to understand props, I was talking to Duncan earlier, and Duncan had a great understanding of it. It's just like passing parameters to a function, right? We have some values here. We're sort of calling a function here. We want to pass it some values. So to pass it a value, we need something to capture these values. So I would say maybe word would be the variable that I'm going to capture it with. And the value I'm going to pass it is puzzle word. Right, so this is the state value that I have access to in my app. This is going to be how I access the value I'm setting here. How do I access it inside of puzzle? It's going to come down via props. So if I go to my puzzle component, props. So this is some sort of React magic. I could pass down many things here. I could say maybe a color if I cared about some coloring. Let's say red. I'm not going to actually use that, but I can pass as many props as I want to. I'm not limited by any means. React is going to take every single prop that you pass. It's going to package it up into a dictionary or an object for JavaScript, but I call it dictionary. So it's going to package it up into a dictionary, and that's what React is automatically going to pass to your component. So puzzle, the first parameter is going to be a dictionary. Again, I can name this whatever I want. I could say parent values that are being passed down, right? Again, we shouldn't call it this, but there's no reason we can't. It's just a variable. So if I happen to name it this, again, that's a dictionary. Now I access that dictionary, and in this case, we called it, the variable we created was word, right? So this word is coming from right here, that prop value that we created. We can name that anything we wanted to also. If we wanted to access color, we do the same thing. We just do, parent value that are values that are being passed down dot color if we wanted it. All right, so puzzle words when needed. Incorrect guesses. Maybe that's going to need, let's say, incorrect values, and that's going to be, we're going to need something else here potentially. I think we were restricted. So this was part of the challenge, I think. We're restricted to only use puzzle and guess letters as state values. So we have our puzzle. I call it puzzle word. I'm going to create one more state value and call that guess letters. All right, and then set guess letters. All right, use states. Initially, that's going to be an empty array. So I'm going to decide to keep this as an array. So every guess that we make, we're just going to populate it here. So let's actually do that. I'm going to do handlers. All right, this is going to be, maybe it's not cheating, but it's a little, not even a shortcut, but you technically can pass down a set state function down as a prop. So in this case, user input, I'm going to say update guesses. I'm going to pass down this function right here. I'm not going to create a handler for this. I could, but it's going to do the same thing I want, which is called going to be set guess letters. So it's going to pass that state function or state updating function down here. All right, so update guesses is going to be a function that's going to directly call set guess letters. I think that's kosher. I'm not sure what other React developers might think about it, but I think that's good enough. So here, submit guess, right? We're calling submit guess, which is extracting the value. We're console logging it. Well, instead of just console logging it, let's actually pass the value back up to our parents. Now, normally, child components don't have direct communication to their parent. Parents can communicate with their child by passing down props. There's no reverse props that children can send back to their parents. If we do want to send back something to the parent, this is the design we use, where the parent passes down a function, and then the child can call that function to pass back a value that it wants. So in this case, in user input, we're going to call props. Looks like I need props to be passed down here. Nope, not there. Sorry, we have props up here. So props dot update guesses is what I called it. We're going to pass it the user guess. All right, so again, this is a function that was passed down. We're going to pass back a value. So if I look at my app, that is this function here. Sorry, this function here. I guess just to make this more clear, I'm going to add another handler here. Again, I don't have to in this case, but I'm going to update guess letters. I just want to make sure we know what's going on. So here, this is going to take in letter and set guess letters. This is a great side point that we're going to discuss here. I know we have a lot to get through. Guess letters is an array. What if I did set guess letters, push letter, and then I do set guess letters. Oops, sorry, that should be guess letters. Set guess letters, guess letters. All right, does anyone have an issue with this? So what we're basically doing is the child's going to pass us a letter or a guess, and then we're going to add that to our guess letters, and then call our updating function to let them know what the new value is.
Yeah, you're
Are you
modifying
like,
state, right?
Sorry, I heard two people talking. I think both of you guys have the right idea. What's the issue here?
you're modifying the state value directly?
Tanya's got it. We are modifying a state value directly. This is a no-no, right? We're not supposed to directly modify a state value. So it gets a little tricky with arrays, right? If we just had like a string's pretty simple. I just create my own string here and say, new string equals old string. So let's say puzzle word plus X. I don't know what I'm doing here, but if I need to update, puzzle word, I could just create a new string here. Let new string equals puzzle word, and then I could call the set puzzle word with the new string, right? That's simple enough. So primitive types, pretty simple. Just create a new item and then pass a new item. With arrays and objects and something that's non-primitive, it gets a little trickier, but it's still the same idea. So first thing we need to do is create a brand new copy. So create a copy of guest letters. Again, this is back to week 1, but I always want to make sure we highlight this point. I cannot simply do let new guest letters equals guest letters. Can someone tell me what this line is doing?
It's just pointing,
Yep.
but not actually creating another one.
Yep, Kana's got it. So this, again, this assignment is not creating a new copy of data. This is just saying I have a new variable that's pointing at the same data that guest letters are pointing at. So again, that very easy thing to kind of miss, but arrays can't be copied this way. Primitive types can be. Instead, the shortcut way is basically you surround this with angle bracket or square brackets because it's going to be an array, and use the spread operator. What this is going to do is it's going to take the original array. It's going to create a temporary pieces of it. It's not going to modify this. So to be clear, the spread operator does not modify your original data or your original object or array here. So it's going to take the values here, basically create individual values that are floating out in space, and then the square brackets are going to recapture them into an array. Kind of sounds like magic, but just kind of accept it for what it is. The spread operator will just create some values, and we're going to create a new array in this manner. So now new guest letters is a brand new identical copy of your original data. This local variable is not a state value, so we can modify that as we wish. React does not care about it right now. So we update our copy. And then finally, now we are ready to tell React that, hey, we have some new data for you. Use this array instead of the old array you're using. So set guest letters will, let's say, tell React about our new data. All right, so that is the proper way to update arrays. Updating an object is the same thing. You need to spread it out and then recapture it in curly braces. But now we are actually updating our guest letters. So with that, let's see. So update guest letters. For now, I'm just going to pass guest letters directly into my incorrect guest letters. That's not what we necessarily need to do, but I'm just going to show that as my incorrect guesses. So instead of hard coding this, I'm going to do props.incorrect, what do I call it? Incorrect guesses. Right, so props are being passed down from the parents. I want to double check the name. So incorrect values is what I called it. So let's go with that. Incorrect values. But again, I'm using JavaScript here, right? This is a JavaScript object. I need to surround that with curly braces because I'm using this inside of JSX. Right, guest letters, 35. 35 is BD, guest letters. All right, so again, now what we wired up is input should take in guesses from the user, and then our output of incorrect guesses is going to show every single guest letter, whether right or wrong. So our puzzle is not being touched right now. So let's go here. All right, so animals is our puzzle. We're showing all the letters. We need to work with that. Right now, let's add some guesses. So let's guess X. Oops, nothing happened. Oh, there it goes. What didn't happen the first time? All right, not sure why. Oh, maybe I didn't refresh my page. That's probably it. All right, so if I guess Z, I get a Z down here. Cool. So we're taking it from the input component, passing it up to the parent, and the parent is passing it down to this component. So it looks like those wires seem to be working, but it looks like we're replacing this. So that's not actually what I want. I think I goofed up on my updating, so that is my bad. So we're updating here. Oh, that should be fine. Why is that overwriting it? Any ideas? So I do T. All right, that overwrites it. So why is my array not kosher here? Anyone see what I messed up here? So guest letters, we split it apart. Then we push letter to new guest letters.
Isn't guest letters, or isn't the puzzle word? No, maybe I got that wrong. Letter.
Good time to add some console logs in here. So it's console log, what new guest letters is initialized to. All right, so refresh, maybe. All right, A. All right, so that is not what I want. It should be an array, not a raw value. So user input calls update guesses. Update guesses is, oh, that is what? So, nope. Yeah, so I'm calling set letters directly. I want to call the middleman here. So I'm going to do update guess letters. That is my fault. But now update guesses will call this function, which will call set guess letters for us. So I think that should take care of it. So now if I go A, there we go. We got an empty array, then an R, then a T, and then I, whatever. All right, so that looks like that's tracking correctly. Does anyone have any questions on what I wired up incorrectly before? It's easy to make mistakes, but I just had the wrong handler that was passing down to the input. Okie dokes. All right, we are running short on time, but let's get the puzzle kind of working here. So user input, we did incorrect guesses. Again, incorrect values. Currently, we're passing every single user guess here. We don't want to show every single guess. We only want to show incorrect guesses. So this is a good, I think this is a good chance for us to pass down our puzzle, let's call it word, down to our incorrect guesses also. So again, we're passing puzzle word down to puzzle and also incorrect guesses. Why do we want it here? So that incorrect guesses can take our guess letters, let's call that guesses, and compare it against the word. And then it can appropriately determine if it needs to show the incorrect guess or just ignore that guess because it's correct. So let's do that quickly. So we need to add a function here. So let's do render, let's do helpers, I don't know what it's called. So here, instead of showing some prop value directly, we're going to call a function that says show incorrect guesses. Let's say gets. That's a function we're going to call on each render. So we'll do const gets incorrect guesses. And now we need to compute incorrect guesses. How do we do that? Well, we have access to props.word, which is our puzzle, and then also props.guesses, which are all the guesses that have been made up until this point. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to wrap up shortly, but hopefully we'll get some progress here. So puzzle word, and props guesses. We're gonna need to return eventually incorrect guesses. And so let's build that string. Let's call it let incorrect guesses equal empty string. And then let's do a for loop. So for let's say letter of props.word. All right, so we're going to iterate over our puzzle, grab each letter, and then actually let's do it the other way. So let's do props.guesses. So we're going to go through every guess and then say if props.word.contains, is that a function? And remember, string JavaScript contains includes is what I want. That was close, that was close. So if includes is what I want, includes letter, then let's do a not. So if that doesn't include it, let's read up on this function. Includes method returns a true and false. So again, this is a shortcut where we just negate it. If you want to be, a little more explicit, we do not equals true. Then we want to incorrect guesses plus equals letter. All right, you guys following what we're doing here? So basically, we're just iterating over each letter in our guesses array, I guess. And then we want to check if it exists in the word. If it does not, then we want to update incorrect guesses. So let's see if this actually works. So our word is animal. So if I type in, let's refresh this. If I type in an X, that should be incorrect. So I should see this here. Okay, notice an X got added. What if we type in A? We for sure know an A is in here. So if I type in A, oops, that got added. I know why. Anyone know why? It's because we have some casing issue here. So to resolve that, we could simply maybe do incorrect guesses again. Let's make them all uppercase. So we'll say, is it 2 upper case? Is that the function? Let's just make them all uppercase. So. Any questions? I feel like I've been kind of coding and talking a lot. Did any questions pop up at any point? Do you guys kind of follow how this is sort of piecing together? Upper letter, upper letter. So let's see if this actually works now. So we have covering to uppercase, so we should probably get the correct values now. So if I type in X, we get capital X there. We type in Z, should get a Z there. What if we type in A? Notice this is an update, right? Why? Because our logic said, okay, that's in our puzzle, so we're not going to add it to our incorrect guesses. All right, so I think that for the most part takes care of incorrect guesses. I think it was Michael or someone said, well, what if we need a limit number of incorrect guesses? Yep, that's something we might need to do here. Might want to do in the parent. We can determine that later. But I want to quickly get to puzzle while we have like less than 5 minutes left. Let's get this puzzle thing working. So right now, our puzzle is showing us the answer, right? This is not a fun game if we just know what the answer is, right? So we want to show blank letters initially and fill them in as we get correct guesses. So actually, if we look at our props, we should pass in pretty much the same thing. We want to pass in word and guess letters to our puzzle component so that it can compare and kind of do the opposite of what incorrect guess is doing. So incorrect guess is looking for wrong guesses, puzzle is looking for correct guesses. So given that, let's change this to be get puzzle render. I don't know what else to call it. So that will be a function. Const get puzzle render. Let's do this quickly. Hopefully we can get this completed. All right, so anonymous function. We do a for loop. Let letter of props. Again, this is coming through our props. We have something called guesses. VS Code sort of sometimes guesses incorrectly. All right, so we iterate through that. We want to find correct guess letters. So if Let's say,
Because you're not passing props.
what was that?
You're not passing props in the function.
Thank you. Guess we'll go with our poorly named item, if you guys are fine with that. We should be using props, but since I went down this road, I'll stick with it. All right, for each of our guesses, we want to fill in letters. So I'm gonna kind of just quickly tell us what we need here. We do need a state value. So the state value is gonna be like the temporary puzzle state, which has those underscores in them. So we're gonna create a new state value, states, const puzzle state, or puzzle, I don't know what to call this. I'm just gonna call it puzzle donuts because I'm lacking imagination. Set puzzle donuts. Or we can call it puzzle. This other one's called word. Set puzzle equals use states. Initial value will be empty. Use state. Okay. So we're gonna have a state value. We're gonna create a new temp state value. So let's say let new puzzle equals our old puzzle value. And then for if new puzzle includes the letter to uppercase, then we want, we're gonna have to find every letter. So it's gonna be a little more complicated. We can do a for loop. Let's do a math. All right, running out of time here, so this for loop's easier. So let's puzzle letter of all right, I don't think I'm going to complete this. So the idea here is we're going to iterate via an index. So I equals 0, I less than puzzle new puzzle dot length I plus plus. What we're going to do here is iterate through the puzzle, and for every letter in new puzzle at the index, if that equals if new puzzle equals the letter, then we want to fill in that letter in our puzzle. You guys kind of get what I'm going for? Maybe, kind of, sort of. Letter to uppercase. Then we want to new puzzle. Sorry, this should be word. So props. So for our actual word, which is the target puzzle, that word, if that matches our letter, our new puzzle should get that letter inserted into it. So that should equal letter to face. Right, I think Tom's kicking us out here. All right, you guys kind of get the idea here. So we need initially these will be all underscores based on the initial word that we get. So word in this case is the target puzzle. That's the word of animals. Puzzle here is going to be underscores initially. And we're going to fill in letters as the user keeps guessing them. So, so that should be that. And then finally, we need to call set puzzle with the new puzzle state. All right, so the one thing we need to do here is initialize this to underscores. So I'm just going to cheat right now and hard code that because our animals is hard coded. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's animals. We need spaces probably. So we'll add a space. I don't know if that's going to work. It's not going to work. All right. No underscore.
Oh, so I'm starting to think that maybe you did.
No, you know what? One of the things I kind of like felt bad about is